How Batman the Animated Series Changed the World. Batman the Animated Series is one of the most loved and iconic cartoons in history. 25 years have passed since the series premiered, but its influences can still be felt throughout television, video games, films, and comic books. Today's investigation will take a look at how this classic cartoon might just be the most influential of all time. For many, Batman the Animated Series and its continuation, The New Batman Adventures, are the definitive versions of the character, and we don't blame them. The show was fun and campy, but still took itself seriously, unlike many of the previous TV incarnations of Batman. Remember Bat Dance? That was a real thing. Remember Super Friends? That was real and awesome. Its success even kicked off the incredibly popular DC Animated Universe, one of the greatest achievements in superhero and cartoon history. I'm gonna say it right now, the best shared universe, period. Come at me, MCU. If you're not familiar, after Batman the Animated Series, multiple DC Comics cartoon series followed suit, namely Superman the Animated Series, The New Batman Adventures, Batman Beyond, Static Shock, The Zeta Project, you forgot about that one, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, plus a handful of theatrical and straight-to-video films, half of them very good. All of these aired between 1992 and 2006. Oh, such a good time. Creating a single continuity and massive superhero universe years before the Marvel Cinematic Universe did it. And we don't think it's crazy to say that the DCAU had a big impact on the development of the MCU. To this day, the DCAU is one of the most popular superhero and cartoon franchises, and it's been off the air since 2006. And the cast of Justice League has even spearheaded their own campaign for a long overdue reunion. Come on, do a movie with them or something. Come on, what are you doing? Hey, they all appeared on Talkin' Toons with Rob Paulsen simply to promote the idea of a revival. New episodes of Talkin' Toons air every Friday on ProjectAlpha.com. Thanks. With a darker tone, great action, and a focus on Batman's detective work, who'da thunk it, Batman the Animated Series set the modern standard for what makes a great Batman story. Heck, if you read Matt Reeves' description of what he wants to do with the new Batman movie, it basically sounds like an episode of Batman the Animated Series. I don't know which way to talk out of my mouth. You get it. Look, it took its heroes and villains seriously, while ironically, the films at the time were becoming more and more cartoony. By giving its villains fleshed out backstories, they became relatable and empathetic, instead of just caricatures and obstacles for Batman to overcome. They had real feelings and motivations that Batman and the audience had to acknowledge. These storytelling decisions were vindicated with multiple Emmy wins. The series earned the Outstanding Animated Program Award for both Robin's origin story, Robin's Reckoning, very good, and Mr. Freeze's backstory, Heart of Ice, so good. It's also fair to say that Batman the Animated Series changed cartoons as we know them. Even though the show was aimed at children, the nuance and detail in the storytelling made it accessible to adults as well. They even experimented with putting the show in a primetime Sunday evening time slot to show that this wasn't just a Saturday morning cartoon. Before its premiere, action cartoons were animated in a relatively stiff fashion, prioritizing visual detail over movement, especially something based off of a superhero comic book. Animators used to think that you had to bring the comic book from the page to the screen exactly as it was, but even Marvel's X-Men the Animated Series, which also began in 1992, although looking very much like a comic book, was nowhere near as fluid as Batman. While the show was episodic, it maintained overarching continuity through its characters and paved the way for serialized cartoons to become more mainstream in the United States. I mean, Japan was already ahead of us. They were used to it, but we needed to wrap our brains around it. And it's hard to say if we would have ever gotten shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Teen Titans without the influence of Batman the Animated Series. For a lot of fans, Kevin Conroy's portrayal as the Bat and Bruce Wayne is the quintessential version of Batman.
When you look too long into the abyss looks back through you. Maybe it's time for Batman to return to the night that spawned him, before anyone else gets hurt.
Since the animated series, he's reprised his role in dozens of Batman projects and still plays the character to this day. When I read Batman comic books, I hear Kevin Conroy's voice in my head. Don't you tell me otherwise. People constantly ask Kevin to read Batman dialogue from other projects. It's his version of Batman. Hell, Rob Paulsen even did that over on Talkin' Toons. Now, Mark Hamill's portrayal of the Joker is arguably just as iconic, and he's been the go-to Joker voice actor since he took on the role in the early 90s.
Let the good times roll!
Though Hamill has retired from the role on multiple occasions, he always seems to return in some way or another, just like the Joker. He's slated to appear in the game LEGO DC Villains later this year. My favorite is when he played himself, Swamp Thing, and Joker, all in that one great short from Justice League Action. That was the best. Both Conroy and Hamill even starred as the legendary adversaries in the incredibly popular Arkham video games, which might as well be considered the modern adaptation of Batman the Animated Series. Paul Dini, one of the driving forces behind Batman the Animated Series, served as writer for Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, and these bad boys are filled to the brim with references to the animated series. Many of these come in the form of smaller Easter eggs, but the tone and story focus seems to stem straight from the show. Other references are more blatant. In the original Arkham Asylum game, much of the dialogue in Harley Quinn's patient interview tapes are pulled directly from Mad Love, the series finale of the new Batman adventures, which was also written by Paul Dini. Such a good episode. But for me, it doesn't get no better than Over the Edge. Man, oh man, that episode is the best. But the most notable additions to the Batman franchise come in the form of characters and stories. A handful of characters created for the animated series have made their way into countless comics, TV series, and even the movie screens. Renee Montoya is a Gotham City police detective conceptualized for the show. Interestingly, they decided to preemptively introduce her in a comic book before her TV episode dropped, even though she was created for the animated series. She's made regular appearances in the comics since her introduction, and even took up the mantle of superhero The Question at one point. That was awesome. She's even appeared in the current TV series Gotham, which it's a weird show. It's crazy. It's out there. It's bonkers. That's what I like to say. It's bananas and bonkers. Another popular character introduced in the animated series is Nora Freeze, the terminally ill and cryogenically frozen wife of the icy villain Mr. Freeze. This was the first introduction of Mr. Freeze's tragic backstory that has been used countless times since, including in the 1997 film Batman and Robin. Yes, they attempted to do it in that movie. That's right. Remember how bad that was? I will say this though, there is no better drinking movie ever than Batman and Robin. Just go online, find the drinking games, drink responsibly, and have yourself a good time. You have to take a shot when you see Batman's butt. You will take a shot. Since her introduction in the animated series, the character has taken on a life of her own in the comic books. After being thrown into a Lazarus pit, Nora Freeze became a supervillain known as Lazara, who can raise the dead and conjure flames. She was only stopped after being frozen again by Mr. Freeze, bringing it all full circle. Nora has also appeared in multiple Batman series, including Gotham, and has been in 3 of the Arkham video games. One of the popular villains created for the series was Lockup, Wayne Enterprise security expert turned chief of security for Arkham Asylum. After first appearing in the animated series, Lockup appeared in a handful of DC comics, including Detective Comics, Robin, Nightwing, and Flashpoint. The character is even technically part of DC's Arrowverse on the CW, as he appeared in a companion comic book that takes place between seasons 2 and 3 of Arrow. And if we could just sidebar for a second, we would be remiss if we didn't mention a character created not for this show, but for the sequel series Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis. That's right, future Batman, who was famously created by the talent behind Batman the Animated Series when the network asked them to create a teenage Batman. Instead of altering Batman's origins, they created an entirely new character and mythology that is still beloved by fans today. Batman Beyond is a staple of DC Comics, he shows up in video games, and they almost made a live-action feature film, and still might. Fingers crossed, it would be pretty shway. And that brings us to the absolute most iconic villain created by Batman the Animated Series. You all know who we're talking about. That's right, the Condiment King, complete with ketchup and mustard guns. Who can forget this classic villain? He even appeared in the amazing Lego Batman movie. You guys, come on, you know we're playing. The actual iconic villain we're talking about is, of course, Harley Quinn. The obsessive on-again, off-again sort of girlfriend kind of the Joker was introduced in the episode Joker's Favor. She was meant to be a one-time henchman, but her dynamic with the Joker proved incredibly successful. This popularity catapulted her to the forefront of the series and the entirety of DC Comics.
This time, baby, the joke's on you.
Harley Quinn is easily one of the most popular characters in the entire DC lineup, and she's arguably as popular as the Joker himself. She's made her way into almost every other animated Batman show, including a Batman Brave and the Bold crossover with Scooby-Doo. Yeah, you heard that right. Man, that show was great too, man. Outrageous! Harley has starred in hundreds of comics since her introduction, and she's been featured on multiple comic book teams, including the Gotham City Sirens and the Suicide Squad. She's also easily one of the most popular and frequent cosplays at cons and events. She's also featured in the DC fighting game Injustice, and as mentioned before, she's a major character in the Arkham game series. In live-action television, she was one of the main characters in the 2002 TV series Birds of Prey, and has a cameo in the CW's Arrow.
Do you cuties need some counseling? I'm a trained therapist.
Before it was scrapped, Harley was originally meant to be a villain in the Batman and Robin sequel Batman Unchained, and she finally made her big screen debut in 2016's Suicide Squad. That movie was Not great, but people generally seem to like actress Margot Robbie's portrayal of Harley. I'm one of them. Despite Suicide Squad's poor reception, multiple films featuring Robbie's Harley Quinn have been in development since, including Birds of Prey, Gotham City Sirens, and a standalone Joker/Harley Quinn film. Hey, she also had a little cameo in 2018's Ready Player One. Needless to say, Harley's impact on the DC Universe absolutely cannot be understated. She is a powerhouse. Overall, the impact that Batman the Animated Series has had on comic books, video games, movies, television, and cartoons is genuinely astounding. Its influence is felt far and wide in ways that you may not even realize. For that reason, we have no qualms stating that Batman the Animated Series is the most influential cartoon of all time. Boom! That's right, motherfuckers! But how do you guys feel about Batman the Animated Series? Was it as influential as we think it was? And did we miss any of the lasting impacts that the series had on the franchise? Let us know below in the comments. And we know you're jonesing for more Batman content, so why don't you head over to projectalpha.com to watch some Talkin' Tunes. We mentioned earlier that Rob Paulsen had Batman voice actor Kevin Conroy in to read lines from Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, and you know it was dope. New episodes of Talkin' Tunes drop every Friday. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's animation investigation. If you like this video, do not forget to do the whole like, subscribe, and comment thing, and please share so your friends can enjoy it too. And always remember to shoot us a tweet if you've got cartoons you want us to talk about. Hit us up at Hector is Funny and at Nerdist to give us your ideas. That's gonna close up another case. Catch you in the next animation investigation.